Dr. Andrew Kennedy's heart races as he stares at the towering alien beauty before him, her ethereal features igniting a primal response he can't fully comprehend. Lita, the Ocampa delegate, smiles warmly, her lavender eyes sparkling with an intensity that makes his breath catch. "Human, you make us feel so excited down there," she purrs, her melodic voice sending shivers down his spine. The year is 2045, and Earth has been forever changed by the arrival of the Ocampa. These stunning humanoid females have thrown the planet into chaos with their startling revelation. They need human males to save their species from extinction. As a 35-year-old xenobiologist at NASA, Andrew finds himself thrust into the center of this interstellar drama. Lida steps closer, her silvery hair cascading over her shoulders. "Dr. Kennedy, your species holds the key to our survival," she explains, her words heavy with urgency. "Our males have vanished, leaving us on the brink of extinction, but you, human men, can awaken something within us that we thought lost." Andrew nods, his scientific mind racing to process the implications. He's been chosen as Earth's primary liaison due to his expertise in extraterrestrial biology, but nothing in his years of study could have prepared him for this moment. The fate of an entire alien race now rests on his shoulders, and other parts of his anatomy. The control room buzzes with activity as scientists and government officials monitor their interaction. Screens display real-time data on both Andrew's and Lita's physiological responses. Even the most hardened researchers can't help but gasp as the readings spike when Lita brushes her hand against Andrew's arm. "We need to establish a program," Andrew says, his voice steady despite the turmoil of emotions within him. "A way to match human volunteers with Ocampa partners. And I'll be the first test subject." Lita's eyes widen with what appears to be a mixture of relief and excitement. "You would do this for us?" she asks, her voice filled with wonder. As Andrew nods, alarms blare throughout the facility. Security personnel rush to secure the perimeter as reports flood in of protests erupting worldwide. Religious groups decry the unholy union, while others clamor for the chance to gain access to advanced alien technology and the promise of interstellar travel. In the shadows, members of a clandestine organization exchange meaningful glances. Their mission, to sabotage this alien integration at any cost, fearing the influence these extraterrestrial beauties might wield over Earth. Oblivious to the growing chaos, Andrew and Lita begin their intensive preparations. Medical examinations, cultural briefings, and hours of one-on-one time forge an undeniable bond between them. With each passing day, Andrew finds it harder to maintain his professional detachment. As they stand before a battery of sensors and cameras, preparing for their first intimate encounter, Andrew can't help but marvel at the twists of fate that brought him here. The success or failure of their union could reshape humanity's place in the cosmos. Lita takes his hand, her touch electric. "Are you ready, Dr. Kennedy?" she asks softly. Andrew takes a deep breath, acutely aware of the weight of two worlds resting upon this moment. "Ready as I'll ever be," he replies, stepping forward into an uncertain but thrilling future. As the sensors hummed and cameras whirred, Andrew and Lita's fingers intertwined. The air crackled with anticipation as they stepped into the specially designed chamber. Hours later, they emerged, both flushed and slightly dazed. The scientific team swarmed around them, eager to begin their analysis. Days turned into weeks as Andrew and Lita underwent a battery of tests. Their interactions were scrutinized, their bodies examined down to the cellular level. Finally, Dr. Samantha Chen, the lead researcher, called them into her office. "We've made an extraordinary discovery," she announced, her eyes shining with excitement. "The data shows that human Ocampa coupling triggers a cascade of biological changes in Ocampa physiology. It appears to be reversing the infertility crisis in your species, Lita." Lita's lavender eyes widened. "Is this true? Can we be certain?" Dr. Chen nodded, pulling up a holographic display of complex molecular structures. "These changes are unlike anything we've ever seen. It's as if your biology is awakening." The news spread like wildfire. Within days, the United Nations convened an emergency session to discuss the expansion of the human Ocampa mating program. Debates raged as nations vied for influence and access to the program. Andrew found himself thrust into the spotlight, bombarded with interview requests and invitations to speak at international conferences. Through it all, Lita remained by his side, a calming presence amidst the storm of attention. One evening, as they walked through a quiet park, Lita turned to Andrew. "I want to understand more about your world," she said softly. "There's so much here that's new to me." Andrew smiled, an idea forming. "Then let me show you." Over the next few weeks, they embarked on a whirlwind tour of human culture. Andrew took Lita to art museums, where she marveled at the vivid colors and textures of Earth's greatest masterpieces. They attended symphonies, and Andrew watched in awe as Lita experienced music for the first time, her body swaying to the unfamiliar rhythms. During a hike through a lush rainforest, Lita paused, her hand resting on a moss-covered tree trunk. "Your world is so diverse, so full of life," she whispered. "On our planet, such variety was lost long ago." As their bond deepened, the world around them grew increasingly chaotic. Anti-alien protesters gathered outside research facilities, their angry chants echoing through the streets. Security measures tightened, and Andrew often found himself looking over his shoulder, wary of potential threats. One morning, as they arrived at the research center, they were met by a sea of protesters. Signs bobbed above the crowd, bearing slogans like "Earth for Humans" and "Stop the Alien Invasion." A bottle sailed through the air, shattering at their feet. Security guards rushed to escort them inside. Once safely in the lab, they were introduced to the newest member of the research team. Dr. Elena Rodriguez strode towards them, her heels clicking sharply on the polished floor. "Dr. Kennedy, Lita," she greeted them with a thin smile. "I'm here to accelerate our progress." Over the next few days, Dr. Rodriguez pushed for more aggressive research methods. "Natural conception is too slow," she argued during a tense meeting. "We need to explore artificial insemination, in vitro fertilization. Time is of the essence." Andrew frowned, glancing at Lita. "We can't rush this. The cultural implications alone." "With all due respect, Dr. Kennedy," Rodriguez interrupted, "we're scientists, not cultural ambassadors. Our job is results." As they left the meeting, Lita touched Andrew's arm. "Your colleagues' methods, they feel wrong, impersonal. Is this how humans typically approach reproduction?" Before Andrew could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed as security personnel rushed past them. Dr. Chen appeared, her face pale. "We've been hacked," she said breathlessly. "Someone's trying to access our databases." Hours later, as they worked to assess the damage, news broke of similar attacks on other research sites around the world. A group calling itself Earth First claimed responsibility, vowing to disrupt the alien corruption of humanity. Amidst the chaos, Andrew noticed a change in Lita. She seemed withdrawn, spending more time with the other Ocampa delegates. One evening, he overheard a heated conversation between Lita and Sira, a high-ranking Ocampa official. "We're losing ourselves, Lita," Sira hissed. "These humans, their culture, it's overwhelming our people. We need stricter controls, a more clinical approach." Lita's voice was soft but firm. "We can't isolate ourselves, Sira. Understanding their world is crucial to our survival." As the argument continued, Andrew slipped away, his mind racing. The growing tensions were taking their toll, threatening not just the program, but his relationship with Lita. Days later, Andrew and Lita stood in the medical wing, staring at a holographic display. Dr. Chen pointed to several glowing dots on the image. "These are the first confirmed human Ocampa pregnancies," she explained, "including some male embryos." The room erupted in cheers, but Andrew noticed Lita's conflicted expression. As the others celebrated, she pulled him aside. "Andrew," she whispered, her eyes searching his face. "What happens now? To us? To our people?" Before he could answer, Dr. Rodriguez burst into the room, waving a data pad. "We need to move these women to a secure facility immediately," she demanded. "The threat level has increased exponentially." As security teams mobilized and plans were hastily made, Andrew and Lita found themselves swept up in a whirlwind of activity. The future of both their species hung in the balance, and the path forward was anything but clear. As the first wave of human Ocampa pregnancies progressed, Andrew and Lita found themselves thrust into the spotlight as the public face of interspecies cooperation. Their relationship deepened, but the challenges they faced grew exponentially. One crisp autumn morning, Andrew and Lita stood before a sea of reporters and diplomats at the United Nations headquarters in New York. The air buzzed with anticipation as they prepared to address the assembled crowd about the latest developments in the mating program. Andrew cleared his throat, his hand instinctively finding Lita's. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're pleased to announce that medical scans have confirmed the presence of male embryos in several human Ocampa pregnancies. This breakthrough..." A deafening explosion rocked the building, shattering windows and sending shards of glass raining down on the panicked crowd. Security personnel swarmed around Andrew and Lita, shielding them as they were rushed off the stage. "Earth first!" someone shouted, pointing to a figure in black fleeing the scene. In the aftermath of the failed assassination attempt, the UN established a specialized task force to protect human Ocampa couples and research sites. Andrew and Lita found themselves under constant surveillance, their every move monitored by a team of elite guards. Back at the research facility, Dr. Elena Rodriguez wasted no time capitalizing on the attack. She strode into the emergency meeting, her datapad clutched tightly in her hand. "This incident proves we can't rely on natural conception," she argued, her voice sharp with urgency. "We need to implement my accelerated breeding program immediately." Andrew stood, his face flushed with anger. "We can't abandon our principles just because of one attack. The cultural implications are irrelevant," Rodriguez cut in. "Several governments have already pledged their support. We're moving forward with or without your approval, Dr. Kennedy." As tensions rose within the program, Andrew noticed a change in Lita. She spent more time with the other Ocampa delegates, particularly Sira, who had implemented stricter protocols for human Ocampa interactions. One evening, Andrew found Lita in their quarters, poring over a datapad filled with Ocampa text. "What's that?" he asked, peering over her shoulder. Lita sighed, setting the device aside. "Cultural preservation materials. Sira insists we must limit our exposure to Earth media to maintain our identity." Andrew frowned, feeling a rift growing between them. "But I thought you wanted to learn about our world." Before Lita could respond, Dr. Chen burst into the room, her face pale. "We've made a startling discovery," she said, her voice trembling with excitement and concern. "The prolonged exposure to Earth's environment is having unexpected effects on Ocampa physiology." In the medical bay, Andrew and Lita stared at the holographic displays showing Lita's latest test results. "Your cellular regeneration rate has increased exponentially," Dr. Chen explained, "and your telomeres, they're lengthening. Lita, you're not just adapting to Earth, you're evolving." The implications of this discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Debates raged as researchers split into factions, each advocating for a different approach to these unprecedented changes. As the controversy swirled around them, Andrew noticed Lita becoming increasingly distant. One night, he awoke to find her sitting by the window, her eyes unfocused and glassy. "Lita," he called softly, approaching her. "What's wrong?" She turned to him, her lavender eyes filled with confusion and wonder. I saw our past, Andrew. Our peoples, together, long ago. There's so much we've forgotten." Before Andrew could press for more details, alarms blared throughout the facility. They rushed to the medical wing to find chaos unfolding. Dr. Rodriguez stood over an unconscious Ocampa female, barking orders at panicked staff members. "What happened?" Andrew demanded, pushing his way through the crowd. Rodriguez turned, her face a mask of defiance and fear. "This is Tella. She volunteered for an experimental procedure." As the truth of Rodriguez's unsanctioned breeding experiments came to light, Andrew and Lita found themselves racing against time to save Tella and her unborn child. The incident threatened to derail the entire program, but it also exposed a web of corruption that reached far beyond Rodriguez. Late one night, as they pored over security logs and personnel files, Andrew stumbled upon an encrypted communication between a high-ranking program administrator and a known Earth First operative. "Lita," he called, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "I think we've been infiltrated. Earth First. They're inside the program." As Lita joined him at the computer terminal, her eyes widening at the evidence before them, they knew they stood at the precipice of a revelation that could reshape the future of human-Ocampa relations. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but together they prepared to unravel the conspiracy that threatened everything they had worked for. As Andrew and Lita stared at the encrypted communication, their hearts raced. The implications were staggering. Earth First had infiltrated the very program they sought to destroy. "We need to alert security," Andrew said, reaching for the comm panel. But Lita's hand on his arm stopped him. "Wait," she whispered, her eyes wide. "If they've infiltrated this deeply, we can't trust anyone. We need more evidence." Before they could formulate a plan, alarms blared through the facility. Dr. Chen's voice crackled over the intercom, urgent and strained. "All personnel to the medical wing immediately. We have a situation." Andrew and Lita exchanged a glance before rushing down the corridor. The medical wing was in chaos when they arrived. Doctors and nurses swarmed around multiple beds, their voices a cacophony of medical jargon and urgent commands. Dr. Rodriguez stood at the center of the storm, her face ashen. "It's happening," she said as Andrew and Lita approached. "The first wave of births. They're all starting simultaneously." On every bed lay a woman in labor, some human, some Ocampa. Their cries of pain mingled with the beeping of medical equipment and the shouts of the staff. "How is this possible?" Andrew asked, his knees going weak. "They weren't due for weeks." "The hybrid fetuses," Dr. Chen explained, rushing past with an armful of supplies. "They're triggering early labor in all the mothers, regardless of species." As they watched, the first cry of a newborn cut through the din. A tiny form, skin a pale lavender, was lifted into the air. Its eyes, when they opened, were a startling mix of human and Ocampa features. More cries followed, a chorus of new life entering the world. Andrew and Lita moved from bed to bed, offering comfort and assistance where they could. Hours passed in a blur of activity. As the chaos subsided, they found themselves in a quiet corner of the nursery, surrounded by rows of incubators. Each held a sleeping infant, a perfect blend of human and Ocampa traits. "They're beautiful," Lita whispered, her hand pressed against the clear plastic of the nearest incubator. Andrew nodded, but his expression was troubled. "Lita, we need to talk about what we found. With everything that's happened." His words were cut short as Dr. Rodriguez burst into the room, her earlier composure shattered. "We have a problem," she said, her voice shaking. "The human surrogates, they're experiencing cellular changes, like the Ocampa, but accelerated." Before they could process this new information, Sierra stormed in, her eyes blazing. "This has gone too far," she hissed. "Look at what you've done to our people, to these human women. We must end this program immediately and return to our world." The room erupted into argument, with Lita defending the program and Sierra calling for its termination. As tensions rose, Andrew noticed movement in the incubators. The infants, only hours old, were stirring, their tiny hands reaching out. Suddenly, a crash echoed through the facility. Alarms blared once again, and the sound of gunfire filled the air. "Earth First!" Andrew breathed, his blood running cold. "They're here!" In an instant, they sprang into action. Andrew and Lita began gathering the newborns, while Dr. Rodriguez and Sierra barricaded the door. "We need to get them to safety," Lita said, cradling two infants in her arms. As they worked to secure the nursery, Andrew's mind raced. The infiltration, the synchronized births, the changes in the human surrogates, it all seemed impossibly connected. A memory tickled at the back of his mind, Lita's strange vision of their shared past. "Lita," he said, his voice low and urgent, "your dream, could it have been real? Could there be some connection between our species that we've forgotten?" Lita's eyes widened. "The archives," she whispered, "on my homeworld. If there's an answer, it would be there." The sound of fighting grew closer. They could hear shouts and the thud of boots in the corridor outside. "We need to get these children to safety," Andrew said, his expression resolute. "And then we need to find out the truth, whatever it takes." As they prepared to defend the nursery against the oncoming attack, the oldest of the hybrid infants, barely hours old, opened its eyes. For a moment, Andrew could have sworn he saw a flicker of something, a spark of awareness far beyond that of a newborn. The child reached out, its tiny hand grasping at the air, and in that instant, as the door began to buckle under the assault from outside, Andrew knew that everything was about to change. Change. The room fell silent as the infant's eyes locked onto Andrew's, a silent communication passing between them. The moment shattered as the door burst open, armed figures pouring into the nursery. Andrew and Lita sprang into action, shielding the incubators with their bodies. "Stop!" Dr. Rodriguez shouted, stepping forward. "These children are under international protection." The lead attacker hesitated, his weapon wavering. In that instant of uncertainty, Lita's eyes flashed with persistence. She raised her hand, and a wave of invisible force knocked the intruders off their feet. Andrew stared at her in astonishment. "How did you—" "I don't know," Lita gasped, equally shocked. "It just happened." As security forces flooded the room, subduing the Earth-first attackers, Andrew made a split-second decision. "We need to leave," he whispered to Lita. "Now." Under the cover of chaos, they slipped away, carrying two of the hybrid infants. They made their way to a secured hangar where a prototype ship awaited, a fusion of human and Ocampa technology designed for long-range exploration. As they prepared for launch, Andrew's fingers flew over the controls. "We need answers," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "And I think I know where to find them." Lita nodded, understanding immediately. "The archives on my homeworld." The ship hummed to life, its systems a harmonious blend of both their technologies. As they lifted off, leaving behind the chaos of the facility, Andrew couldn't shake the feeling that they were embarking on something far greater than a simple quest for information. Their journey through space was tense, filled with long stretches of silence punctuated by the soft coos of the infants. Andrew found himself marveling at how quickly they were developing, their eyes tracking movement with an awareness that seemed impossible for newborns. As they approached the Ocampa homeworld, Lita's face grew pale. "The surface," she murmured, gesturing to the view screen. "It's changed." The planet below was a tapestry of harsh reds and browns, its surface scorched and barren. Andrew frowned, checking the ship's sensors. "The atmosphere is highly unstable. How are we going to—" His words cut off as Lita placed her hand on his arm. A jolt of energy passed between them, and suddenly Andrew felt a shift in his perception. The readouts on the screen began to make sense in a way they hadn't before. "I can guide us in," Lita said, her voice filled with a confidence that belied the danger of their situation. "Trust me." Their descent was harrowing, the ship buffeted by violent winds and electrical storms. Andrew's hands gripped the controls, but it was Lita's quiet instructions that guided them safely to the surface. As they stepped out onto the blistering landscape, Andrew felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. The air was thin and acrid, burning his lungs with each breath. Lita's cool hand found his, and once again that strange energy flowed between them. "Focus on me," she said softly. "Let me help you adapt." Gradually, Andrew felt his body adjusting to the harsh environment. His breathing eased, and the burning sensation in his skin subsided. He looked at Lita in wonder, realizing that their connection ran far deeper than he had ever imagined. They made their way across the desolate terrain, the infants secured in protective carriers on their backs. As they approached a massive rock formation, Lita paused, her head tilting as if listening to a distant sound. "Here," she said, placing her hand on the sun-baked stone. "The entrance is here." At her touch, the rock face shimmered and vanished, revealing a shadowy opening. They stepped inside, leaving the harsh exterior behind. The cavern beyond was a marvel of ancient technology. Crystalline structures pulsed with soft light, illuminating twisting corridors that seemed to defy the laws of physics. As they ventured deeper, they encountered a series of challenges. Puzzles that required both Ocampa intuition and human logic to solve. Each test they passed seemed to awaken more of the dormant systems around them. Finally, they reached the heart of the archive, a vast chamber filled with shimmering holographic displays. As Andrew and Lita approached, the central console flickered to life. A voice, neither male nor female, neither human nor Ocampa, filled the chamber. Identity confirmed. Accessing restricted files. The air around them came alive with images and text, telling a story that neither of them could have imagined. The truth of their shared ancestry unfolded before their eyes, the grand experiment, the divergent evolution, and the cosmic threat that loomed on the horizon. As they absorbed this world-shaking information, Andrew felt a tugging sensation at the back of his mind. He turned to see one of the infants, eyes wide and alert, reaching out towards the holographic display. The child's tiny hand passed through the light, and suddenly the images began to shift and change, revealing new layers of information. Andrew and Lita watched in awe as the infant, barely days old, interfaced with the ancient system with an ease that defied explanation. A warning klaxon shattered the moment. The archive's voice spoke again, urgency coloring its tone. Alert! Unauthorized access detected in Earth's solar system. Threat level, critical. Andrew and Lita exchanged a look of dread. They had found the answers they sought, but at what cost? As they raced back to their ship, the weight of their newfound knowledge pressed heavily upon them. The fate of two worlds, and perhaps the entire galaxy, now rested in their hands. As they prepared for the perilous journey back to Earth, Andrew couldn't help but wonder if they would arrive in time to prevent catastrophe. The ship lifted off, leaving behind the ancient repository of knowledge. As they broke through the planet's turbulent atmosphere, Lita's voice was barely a whisper. What have we unleashed? Andrew had no answer, his focus solely on the controls as he plotted the fastest course back to Earth. The hybrid infants, sensing the tension, remained eerily quiet in their carriers. As the stars streaked by outside the view screen, Andrew and Lita knew that the real challenge lay ahead. They had unlocked the secrets of their past, but the future, and the survival of both their species, was far from certain. As they pushed their ship to its limits, racing through the vastness of space, a sudden crackling filled the cockpit. Andrew's hands flew over the controls, trying to isolate the source. It's not the ship, Lita said, her eyes wide with realization. She turned to the hybrid infants, who were now fully alert, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. A voice, small yet impossibly clear, echoed in their minds. Danger! Coming! Earth! Andrew and Lita exchanged shocked glances. Arya, Lita breathed, recognizing the mental signature of the oldest hybrid child. The message continued, growing stronger as they neared Earth. Images flashed through their minds, cities in chaos, strange ships descending from the sky, and a collective fear that seemed to permeate every corner of the planet. As they entered Earth's orbit, the full extent of the crisis became apparent. The planet below was a patchwork of darkness and frantic activity. Plumes of smoke rose from major cities, and the normally organized patterns of satellite communications were in disarray. Earth first, Andrew growled, his fist clenched on the controls. They've made their move. Lita's face was grim as she scanned the incoming data. It's worse than that. Look. She pointed to a series of anomalous readings near the moon. As they watched, a massive shape began to materialize, an alien vessel of impossible proportions. The cosmic threat, Andrew whispered. It's here. Their ship's communications system crackled to life, cutting through the ominous silence. A familiar voice filled the cockpit. Andrew, Lita, thank God you're back. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's voice was strained but determined. We need you planetside immediately, transmitting coordinates now. As they began their descent, following the provided flight path, they witnessed the full scale of the invasion. Smaller craft, sleek and predatory, detached from the massive ship and streaked towards Earth. Where they passed, lights flickered and died. Communications went dark. They landed at a hidden facility, nestled in the Rocky Mountains. As the ship's ramp lowered, they were met by a group of haggard but resolute individuals, human and Ocampa alike. Dr. Rodriguez rushed forward, her eyes widening at the sight of the hybrid infants. You brought them, she breathed. Good. We'll need them. Sierra stepped forward, her previous hostility replaced by an unyielding commitment. We have much to discuss, she said, leading them into the facility. Inside, they found a hive of activity. Humans and Ocampa worked side by side, monitoring screens filled with data and coordinating global communications. "We've made some discoveries in your absence," Dr. Rodriguez explained as they walked. "The hybrid children, they're evolving at an exponential rate. Their abilities, they're beyond anything we could have imagined." They entered a secure room where a holographic display showed the current global situation. Andrew and Lita quickly shared what they had learned in the Ocampa archives. "A shared ancestry," Sira mused. "It explains so much, but now we face extinction if we cannot unite." A commotion from the corridor interrupted their discussion. A group of scientists burst in, their faces a mix of awe and fear. "The children," one of them gasped. "They're linking." They rushed to a nearby observation room. Through the reinforced glass, they saw hundreds of hybrid children, their eyes closed in concentration. At the center stood Arya, her small form radiating an intense energy. "They're forming a collective consciousness," Dr. Rodriguez explained, her voice hushed. "And Arya, she's amplifying it, directing it." As they watched, the air around the children began to shimmer. Devices in the room sparked to life, connecting to the strange energy field. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. "Earth first," a voice announced over the intercom. "They've found us." Andrew's hand went to his weapon. "We need to protect the children. They're our only hope." Lita nodded, her eyes flashing with commitment. "I'll coordinate our defenses. Sira, can you help me tap into the Ocampa telepathic network?" As they prepared for battle, Dr. Rodriguez pulled Andrew aside. "There's something else you need to see," she said, leading him to a secluded lab. Inside, a holographic display showed a complex DNA strand. "We've been analyzing the invaders' genetic structure," she explained. "Andrew, they're not entirely alien. They share markers with both humans and Ocampa." Andrew's mind reeled at the implications. "Another branch of our ancestors?" A distant explosion rocked the facility. "We'll have to solve that mystery later," Dr. Rodriguez said grimly. "Right now, we need to focus on survival." They rushed back to the main control room, where Lita and Sira were coordinating the defense. Through the monitors, they watched as Earth-First forces clashed with the facility's defenders. "We need more time," Lita said, her voice strained. "The children are close to establishing the planetary defense network, but they're not ready yet." Andrew's gaze hardened. "Then we'll buy them that time." He turned to the assembled group, a mix of humans and Ocampa united by a common threat. "Let's show these invaders what happens when they mess with Earth." As they prepared to make their stand, the air around them began to vibrate. The hybrid children's energy field expanded, enveloping the facility. Outside, the first waves of the alien assault craft entered the atmosphere, their weapons primed to strike. The battle for Earth's survival had begun, and the fate of two species hung in the balance. Balance, the hybrid children's energy field, pulsing with an otherworldly light, expanded outward, meeting the onslaught of alien weaponry. The invaders' energy beams dissipated against the shimmering barrier, but the strain on the young defenders was evident. Andrew watched as Arya, her small form at the center of the group, trembled with exertion. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and a thin trickle of blood ran from her nose. His heart clenched at the sight. "We can't keep this up indefinitely," Lita said, her voice tight with concern. She stood at a control panel, monitoring the children's vital signs. Their bodies can't handle this level of stress for long. Dr. Elena Rodriguez rushed over, her face pale as she studied the readouts. "She's right. If we don't find a way to relieve the strain soon, we risk severe neurological damage. Or worse." Andrew's mind raced, recalling the ancient Ocampa technology they'd discovered. An idea began to form, dangerous and uncertain, but potentially their only hope. "What if we could share the burden?" he said, turning to face the group. "Use the Ocampa tech to enhance adults, both human and Ocampa. Jumpstart our dormant genes and accelerate the evolution process." Lita's eyes widened with understanding. "It could work, but Andrew, the risks are better than watching these children die," he finished, his teeth clenched. Dr. Rodriguez nodded, already mobilizing her team. "We'll need to adapt the technology, create an interface with our equipment. It won't be perfect, but—" An explosion rocked the facility, cutting her off. Dust rained down from the ceiling as alarms blared. We don't have time for perfect, Andrew said. How soon can you be ready? Give us an hour, Dr. Rodriguez replied, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. As the scientists rushed to prepare, Andrew and Lita found a moment alone. They stood before the observation window, watching the hybrid children maintain their valiant defense. I'll go first, Andrew said softly. We don't know what this will do. Lita took his hand, intertwining their fingers. We go together, she said, her eyes meeting his. Whatever happens, we face it as one. An hour later, they stood before the hastily constructed activation chamber. Wires and tubes snaked from ancient Ocampa crystals to modern medical equipment, creating a hybrid of technologies separated by millennia. Are you sure about this? Dr. Rodriguez asked, her hand hovering over the activation switch. Andrew and Lita exchanged a glance, a lifetime of understanding passing between them in an instant. They nodded in unison. As they stepped into the chamber, the air around them began to crackle with energy. The door sealed shut, and for a moment all was still. Then pain, blinding, searing pain that tore through every cell in their bodies. Andrew felt as if he was being unmade and remade, his very essence torn apart and reconfigured. Beside him, Lita's body arched in agony, her mouth open in a silent scream. Through the haze of torment, Andrew became aware of more. His consciousness expanded, touching minds both familiar and alien. He saw flashes of memory, not just his own, but the collective history of two species, intertwined across the vastness of space and time. And then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. The chamber door hissed open, releasing a cloud of steam. Andrew and Lita stumbled out, supporting each other as they adjusted to their new reality. The world looked different, sharper, more vibrant. Andrew could sense the energy flowing through the facility, could feel the strain on the hybrid children, as if it were his own. It worked, Dr. Rodriguez breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. Your cellular structure, your neural patterns, they're evolving before our eyes. Before Andrew could respond, another explosion rocked the facility, this one closer, more urgent. General Marcus Steele's voice crackled over the intercom. We've got incoming. Earth First forces have breached the outer defenses. They're heading for the lab. Andrew met Lita's gaze, seeing his own newfound power reflected in her luminescent eyes. Without a word, they joined hands and reached out with their minds, connecting with Arya and the other hybrid children. The strain on the young ones immediately lessened as Andrew and Lita added their strength to the shield. Through their shared consciousness, they could sense the invaders' ships reeling back, their weapons suddenly ineffective against the reinforced barrier. But even as they celebrated this small victory, they became aware of a new presence. Minds vast and ancient, yet somehow familiar, brushed against their consciousness. The invaders, Lita gasped. They're like us, a branch of our ancestors that chose a different path. Andrew nodded, his mind racing with the implications. And not all of them agree with this invasion. I can sense dissent, a faction that wants peace. Their revelation was cut short as the sound of gunfire erupted in the corridor outside. Earth First had arrived, intent on destroying the very technology that could save humanity. Andrew and Lita moved as one, their bodies glowing with newfound energy. As they stepped into the hallway to confront the attackers, they knew that this was just the beginning. The true battle, for understanding, for unity, and for the future of two species, was only just beginning. The true battle, for understanding, for unity, and for the future of two species, was only just starting. As Andrew and Lita stepped into the hallway, their bodies pulsed with newfound energy. The air around them crackled with an invisible force, and they moved with a fluid grace that belied the chaos erupting around them. The first wave of Earth First attackers rounded the corner, weapons raised. Lita's eyes flashed, and suddenly the incoming bullets froze mid-air, suspended in a shimmering field of energy. With a flick of her wrist, she sent them clattering harmlessly to the ground. Andrew surged forward, his enhanced strength and agility propelling him into the midst of the attackers. He moved like a blur, disarming opponents with precise strikes and throws that left them sprawled on the ground, groaning in pain. "We need to push them back," Lita called out, her voice carrying over the din of battle. She reached out with her mind, sensing the layout of the facility and the positions of their allies. Dr. Rodriguez and the others are still vulnerable. Andrew nodded, his own newfound senses allowing him to perceive the ebb and flow of the conflict. He tapped into the facility's communication system with a thought. General Steele, we need reinforcements at the main junction. Can you hold the perimeter? Affirmative, came the gruff reply. We've got our hands full, but we'll manage. Just keep those bastards away from the lab. As they fought their way through the winding corridors, Andrew and Lita's teamwork reached new heights. They moved in perfect synchronization, their enhanced abilities complementing each other flawlessly. Lita's telekinetic shields deflected incoming fire, while Andrew's lightning-fast reflexes allowed him to incapacitate attackers before they could react. The battle raged on, with both sides utilizing a mix of advanced technology and newly awakened abilities. Earth-first soldiers wielded experimental weapons designed to disrupt psychic abilities, while the defenders countered with their own arsenal of high-tech gear and psionic powers. In the midst of the chaos, Dr. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. Andrew, Lita, we've done it! The volunteers are ready! Moments later, a group of newly enhanced individuals burst onto the scene, led by General Marcus Steele himself. The general's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light as he charged into the fray, his body moving with the same fluid grace as Andrew and Lita's. Took you long enough, Andrew quipped, ducking under a wild swing from an Earth-first attacker before dropping him with a well-placed strike. Steele grinned, his newfound strength evident as he tossed an opponent clear across the room. Had to make sure I was looking my best for the party. With the addition of the newly enhanced defenders, the tide of battle quickly turned. Earth First found themselves outmatched and outmaneuvered at every turn. Their weapons proved ineffective against the combined psychic defenses of the enhanced humans and Ocampa, and their tactics fell apart in the face of their opponents' superior coordination and abilities. As the last of the attackers were subdued, a sudden, urgent presence filled Andrew and Lita's minds. Arya's voice, tinged with fear and purpose, echoed in their thoughts. They're coming, the young hybrid's mental voice rang out. The invaders have launched their final assault. We need you now. Without a word, Andrew and Lita sprinted towards the central control room, their enhanced speed carrying them through the facility in a matter of seconds. They burst through the doors to find Arya and the other hybrid children locked in deep concentration, their small forms radiating waves of psionic energy. We're here, Lita said, reaching out to gently touch Arya's shoulder. Tell us what you need. Arya's eyes opened, glowing with an inner light. We need to connect, she said, her voice carrying a wisdom far beyond her years. All of us, the entire planet. Andrew and Lita exchanged a glance, understanding the magnitude of what Arya was proposing. They nodded in unison and took their places among the circle of hybrid children. As they joined hands, Andrew felt his consciousness expand exponentially. His mind touched not just those in the room, but countless others across the globe. Humans, Ocampa, and hybrids alike, all linked in a vast psychic network that spanned the entire planet. Through this connection, Andrew perceived the incoming threat with crystal clarity. The invaders' warships descended upon Earth like a swarm of angry hornets, their weapons primed to unleash devastation. But as the first salvo of alien energy weapons streaked towards the planet, something extraordinary happened. The combined power of Earth's defenders coalesced into a shimmering barrier that enveloped the entire globe. The invaders' attacks dissipated harmlessly against this psychic shield, their most potent weapons rendered useless. In that moment of unity, Andrew and Lita sensed something else, a flicker of doubt and confusion among the invading force. They focused their attention on this anomaly, probing deeper into the collective consciousness of their attackers. There, Lita's voice echoed in Andrew's mind. Do you feel it? Not all of them want this conflict. Andrew concentrated, reaching out to the dissident minds he could now perceive among the invaders. With Lita's help, he began to transmit a message, not of hostility or defiance, but of peace and shared ancestry. As the battle raged in Earth's orbit, a cosmic drama unfolded on a scale beyond imagination. The fate of two long-separated branches of the same species hung in the balance, with the future of multiple worlds at stake. Through their psychic link, Andrew and Lita prepared to confront the leaders of the invading force, knowing that the next few moments would determine the course of history for generations to come.
If you finish this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.